With Dead Reckoning Part 1 set to release in about a week, we're going to be taking a look back at Mission Impossible Fallout and everything that I think makes this movie great. Mission Impossible Fallout is interesting for quite a few reasons. It's the first time in the entire franchise where a director is returning to direct another film, as Christopher McQuarrie also helmed the previous installment, Rogue Nation, but then there was also just a ton of drama behind the scenes. We all know that this is the movie where Tom Cruise broke his ankle that shut down production for 7 weeks. And then you had the whole Henry Cavill mustache gate where he legally wasn't allowed to shave it for the reshoots for Justice League, which gave us this CGI monstrosity. But all of this was well worth it, because to me, Fallout is not just great, it's the best movie of the franchise. So let's get into it. The dream scene that opens this film lets us know right away that this is going to be unlike any of the other Mission Impossible movies, where we're really going to be exploring the psychology of Ethan Hunt, learning about his biggest regrets as well as the guilt that he carries, mainly surrounding his relationship with Julia. And I love that, because even though we saw Julia at the end of Ghost Protocol, and she seemed to be pretty happy, like, part of you is thinking like, wait, didn't Ethan Hunt just straight up ruin her life? So I love how this is finally going to be addressed. And what it does is it gives the film an extra layer of conflict, where yes, of course this is going to be about preventing the destruction of the world, but it's also going to be about Ethan overcoming this internal conflict surrounding his guilt, and that is going to be just as vital. So the world-threatening device in this film are the plutonium spheres, and Ethan actually has a chance to obtain these plutonium spheres really early on, but he doesn't because he chooses to save Luther's life instead. And this whole dilemma of saving one life versus saving the world becomes a theme throughout the film, but because Ethan fails, it gives us the fake hospital scene. And what makes this scene great is that it doesn't feel fake at first. We see the news program in the background showing the world falling apart. We see Ethan looking very distraught, and then you add in the super emotional music that's being played.
Sea off the coast of Saudi Arabia. Radiation has been detected, indicating that nuclear weapons were
and
used.
All of this convinces you for a little bit that maybe this actually happened. But as the scene progresses, things just start to feel a little bit off. Like the music is building up, and the way Ethan and Luther are behaving just feels so out of character. And that's where you realize that this is all a giant fake out. And it's a perfect way to deceive the audience for a little bit, as well as this guy to unlock the phone, and it's the perfect transition into the credits. Following the credits, we get such an awesome introduction to Sloane and Walker. I love how their footsteps sync up to the music. It perfectly connects to this whole metaphor about these two being Hammer, that they're just gonna go through you to get what they want. But finally, let's talk about the first of many great action sequences. What I love about the action in general is that each sequence is just so different from one another, and each section within a sequence is different. Take for instance this one. We start with the Halo jump, which just might be my favorite moment in the entire film because it is just so unlike anything I've ever seen before. I mean, we're really watching Tom Cruise just skydive out of this plane from 25,000 feet up in the air. But what might be even more impressive is that there's a guy with a camera strapped to his helmet jumping out with him and somehow filming all of this and keeping everything in focus. After the Halo jump, we get the amazing fist fight in the bathroom. And what I love about the fighting style in this scene is that it's just kind of dirty and so brutal. The characters are just beating the shit out of each other, throwing each other through walls. And of course, it has probably one of the greatest moments in cinematic history where Henry Cavill reloads his biceps. But the final section of this long action sequence takes place in this like luxury area of the nightclub. And I just love how the fight choreography is so different than what we just saw in the bathroom. The fighting here is so much more precise and efficient, where you're just taking somebody out with one move. One of the things that was obvious from the moment he walked on screen was that Walker was going to end up being John Lark. So I like how the movie just reveals this really early on. And I love this scene between him and Sloane, not so much for what the characters are saying, but with just how this entire scene is composed. One of the most underrated aspects to the film is that this is a really beautiful looking movie. Everything from the lighting to the wide shots that show these huge landscapes just make Mission Impossible Fallout not just such a fun movie to experience, but also just straight up a fun movie to look at. So Ethan's going to go forward with this heist to break out Lane, and this gives us our second great action sequence. And this is just another example of how the action in this movie just keeps going and going. There's so many logical points throughout this sequence where I feel like other movies would have just ended it there. Like when they're driving the truck that rams in between the buildings and it traps the cops on one end while they escape on the bikes. I feel like you could have ended it there. But Ethan's bike just happens to malfunction, which leads to a motorcycle chase scene that is so thrilling because you're really watching Tom Cruise's crazy ass drive through France without a helmet, navigating through traffic, and every single one of the close calls where you think he's about to ram into a car and kill himself, it just makes you want to jump out of your seat. He does crash into a car, and you think that he's finally going to be arrested, but all of this is a part of the plan to go down the sewer and land on this boat, and you could have ended the chase there. They're about to leave in a car, and they open up the garage door, and there just happens to be a traffic cop just standing there coincidentally, and it is such a hysterical moment. But it also becomes an important character moment for Ethan, where he yet again has to decide, is this one life worth saving, even if it means potentially jeopardizing this entire operation? But of course he decides to take these guys out. He gets into the car, drives away, and you think there, finally this chase sequence is going to end. But it doesn't. Ilsa appears on a motorcycle and you get a whole new chase sequence. And the only way this ends is that Ethan runs over Ilsa with his car. And that actually hurts him deeply because this is somebody he truly cares about, which contributes even more to the emotional conflict that Ethan is battling. Now Ethan has broken Lane out of prison. You think that he's preparing to do this exchange for the plutonium, but he's actually preparing to do a trick on Walker into revealing that he is John Lark. But what Ethan doesn't know is that Walker is ready to pull a fast one on him too. In this shootout, Alec Baldwin's character is killed, Walker is escaping, and Ethan has to go on a foot chase to go after him. And this foot chase is amazing because yes, it is tense, but it's also so funny. It's tense because you know what's coming. Tom Cruise in real life is about to break his ankle. And yes, the shot where he actually did break his ankle is in the film. Like you see him grimace in just a tremendous amount of pain, but he still gets up and limps past the camera to complete the shot. And it's remarkable because it just shows how there's nobody like Tom Cruise. Nobody loves movies, nobody's as dedicated to making movies as much as he is. But my favorite moment in this sequence is when Ethan finds himself in an office building and he's preparing to jump out of a window and all the other just everyday office workers are just staring at him in utter shock and confusion, except for one woman who gives him like this slight nod of approval. And I just want to learn more about this woman. Like, is she nodding because she's some sort of anarchist who wants to see him like fall to his death? Or is she nodding saying like, nah, I've thought about this before, you could definitely make it? But despite his best efforts, Walker and Lane both get away. But lucky for them, they were able to put a tracker in Walker's neck, so now they're just waiting for that to activate. So in the meantime, you get this really great scene between Luther and Ilsa, where we learn more details about the Ethan and Julia relationship and how it ended. But what's even more interesting is that we learn that Ethan is not the only one in this film dealing with guilt. Luther actually blames himself for everything that has gone wrong and actually wishes that Ethan had just killed them from the start so that they wouldn't have been in this mess. The tracker comes online, which brings the team to Kashmir, and it's there where we learn that this has all been a master plan from Lane to get Ethan and Julia together, which gives this climax the highest personal stakes for Ethan since Mission Impossible 3. There's so many things going on in this final action set piece. You have Ethan, or should I say Tom Cruise, because he actually did this in real life, flying a helicopter through cliffs and stuff trying to take out Walker, all while Luther's trying to deactivate a bomb and Ilsa and Benji are trying to locate the second one, which leads to a whole fight between them and Lane. Cut back to Ethan where he rams his helicopter into Walker's, which leads to this great fight between them on the side of a cliff. And what I appreciate about this climax is even after Ilsa takes out Lane and Ethan murders Walker, the action and the tension doesn't end there, because now Ethan has to race to deactivate the detonator. And I love that the only reason why he's able to do so, the only reason why he's able to climb these mountains in time, is because we saw in Mission Impossible 2 that he is a rock climbing prodigy. At least that's just what I tell myself. And I love that when the time hits 0, you get the quick fade to white. And similarly to the fake hospital scene in the beginning of the film, the fade to white just makes you think for a split second that they didn't get it done. But of course they did, because he's goddamn Ethan Hunt.
My man.
And the final scene of the film is a perfect conclusion, where you get this really sweet moment between Ethan and Julia. For the entire film, Ethan has convinced himself that he destroyed Julia's life. But what she reassures him is that none of this would have been possible had she never have met Ethan. She would have never found this opportunity, she wouldn't have learned so much about herself, which finally allows Ethan to release all that emotional baggage that he's been carrying. So those are the elements that make Mission Impossible Fallout great for me. If there's other moments that stand out to you that I didn't touch on, let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.